Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to spend a good amount of time in the chair, doing some chair mobility. Want to work some foot mobility, toe mobility for some metatarsal pain, foot pain. Going to get into some good neck mobility and shoulder mobility, hopefully in the seated position, and then try to work through some hip stuff as well. And we'll finish up on the floor doing some glute activation. So should be a good one. Let's get started. So we're going to start in the standing position, going through our 6 walks for doing a little bit of light foot mobility. Now, considering a little bit of the class today is geared around metatarsal pain, I want to make sure that we're going into this incredibly light and as low on the pain scale as possible. I'm assuming that with metatarsal pain, and generally metatarsal pain is going to be pain bottom of the foot, common around the first, second, third metatarsals, kind of where we toe off or push off in our gait mechanics. It can be real nasty, gets real hard to go into big toe extension, which makes it difficult to push off through our gait phase. And it can be a nasty pain pattern that takes a few weeks to months to kind of get through. So starting out, we're going to load onto the ball of the big toe. Again, I want to be very light. I'm stepping somewhat out forward and out to the side, and I want my knee to lightly track to the inside. And I want to just lightly load and unload. You can keep the foot in contact with the floor as you load and unload. If this is not painful to the foot, we can start to feel that spring by letting the foot release, that load and unload. And what we're loading is the arch of the foot. So as I'm getting into this load and unload, I want to make sure the heel stays off the ground, but I want to feel a little bit of like springy stretch into the medial arch of the foot. We'll do 5 to 10 on each side. So once you've done 5 on 10 on one side, we'll switch. Again, ball of the big toe, outside ball is off the floor, heel is off the floor. Foot stepping out, knee is slightly turning internal. And again, this is load to unload. It can be foot in contact with the floor if it's sensitive or a little bit on that pain scale. If it's not painful, we can get a nice release and start to feel that spring effect of the foot. Once we get through our 5 to 10, we're going to switch back to the other side. This step's going to be a little bit more straight out in front. We're going to turn the foot to the outside ball of the foot. Big toe ball is off the floor, heel is still off the floor. Knee is now going to slightly track out. Again, this is load and unload. Foot can remain in contact with the floor if it's painful. And if it's painful, I want to modulate how much weight I'm putting into that foot so you can control to make sure that you're not going into that level 3 or above. Again, if it's not painful, I want to get into that nice spring-loaded effect. Feel that load through the lateral arch of the foot. And again, we'll switch sides and do the same thing. Real useful here to notice the difference of how this feels on the right side compared to the left side. Is one ankle a little stiffer, a little tighter? Is one side more sensitive? Does one side feel less stable, like you can't control it as well? Those are really good things to kind of take notice of. Very helpful in a session. Coming back to the first foot, we're going to load similar to the way we did with our first step, stepping out to the side, ball of the big toe touches, knee is tracking internally. But now as we load the big toe, we're letting the heel lightly touch and then release. So we load all the way into that lateral medial arch of the foot so the heel touches, and then feel the heel release. If this is painful, keep the ball of the foot lightly in contact with the floor. If it's not painful, then as the heel release, the ball of the big toe releases next. Okay, again, I want this to be a nice spring effect if you can get to that point. If it's painful, we're not going to be working the spring as much. I mean, we are, but it's not going to feel quite as springy because we got to go a little bit slower in order to prevent that pain from elevating. Switching to the other side, ball of the big toe, loads, knee tracks internal till you feel the heel, and then release the heel, going load to unload. And if it's not painful, feel that spring pop the big toe off the floor. Again, outside edge of the foot is not touching. I'm loading internal, so I keep that weight largely through the inside of the foot. Outside of the foot stays off the floor. Coming back to the other foot, this step is going to be more out straight in front again, and we're going to let the foot roll as much as we can to the outside edge of the foot. We're getting on that outside blade. Now this position's getting us a little precarious into like the way we would normally sprain an ankle or roll an ankle. That's why we have our staff. I want to make sure that we're only loading enough to feel it, but not so much that we feel unstable or we're at risk of losing our ankle joint from underneath us. On this lateral blade, I want to try to keep the very back heel off the ground. So try to keep a little space from the heel. The knee is going to track out, and again, we're lightly shifting our weight to load onto it, and then shifting our weight to our back foot. I want to be super soft and subtle on this as well. Again, I want to make sure that we're not overloading that ankle to where we're at risk of falling. If this feels solid, not painful, we can then start to load and unload and feel that foot release from the floor. But again, I want to make sure that we have good, solid, stable ankles for that first. Switching to the other side, roll that foot out. This is again a good place for an assessment point. Does one ankle roll a little bit further than the other? Does one feel a little tighter, stiffer, more restricted, or does it feel less stable? My left ankle feels less stable. It's got good stability. I can load it and unload it, but it just doesn't feel quite as turned up as my right side. My right side feels a lot more stable than the left, especially on this lateral side. So still light load, let the knee track out, and then unload. Switch back to the first foot. Now we're coming into our heel strike. I want to step a little bit out, away from the body, and I want to turn the sole of the foot slightly out and away so that we are touching on the inside edge of the heel. Knee is going to lightly track internal. Again, this is a load, shift your weight onto the heel, and then shift your weight off of the heel. You can keep the heel in contact with the floor to start with. Just feel that load and unload. If that's not painful and you can have good balance and control, we can let that heel release. And I still want to think spring, even though the heel is the least springy part of the foot. It's going to feel like you're stepping onto a peg leg and trying to spring off of a peg leg. Not very springy, but I still want to work that kind of effect into it. And then we'll switch, do the same thing on the other side. So again, that foot steps out lightly, sole of the foot slightly turning away, landing on the inside heel, knees tracking to the inside. And again, light load to unload. Heels might feel a little bit more sensitive here. Having a good mat, yoga mat, can be helpful. Carpet, something that's soft. Although the more that you do these 6 walks, I think you'll find the sensitivity in the heel actually improves, especially as we start to rebuild the spring in the foot. Switch back to the other foot, come to our last step. This one's coming straight out in front. We're going to turn our foot so it turns slightly into our midline of our body so that we're loading onto the outside edge of the heel. This one, the knee is going to slightly track out. And again, it's a light load, shifting weight forward, unload, shifting weight back. If you need to keep the foot in contact with the floor again, that's fine. Feel that load and then feel the unload. If you're able to do this where you can find that dead spring of the heel, stepping in and then releasing off of it. And then same thing on the other side. If balance, ankle rolls, instability in the ankle are an issue, concerns with falling because of balancing on one foot, this is a drill that I highly recommend doing every day. It's great for rebuilding ankle stability. All right, so let's go ahead and pull our chair out. And we're going to come into a seated position and set the staff to the side for the moment. We're going to come back to it pretty quickly. I want to do some seated crocodile breath. So I like playing with our crocodile breathing work in different positions, largely because we breathe in lots of different positions. So I want to make sure that our breathing apparatus is functioning in as many positions as possible. So making two big C shapes with our hands, the thumbs are going to press into our low back. Index fingers are pressing into the abdominals in the front. I want to feel that musculature of the low back with the thumbs, and I want to feel that little bit of that musculature of the abdominal wall in the front. And I want the side palms pressing into our side body, feeling that side wall. I want to let the hands clench in just a little bit to create resistance. And we're going to imagine that the walls of the abdominal are a balloon, and we want to expand that balloon out and away. We want that expansion to move forward into the belly, back in, or into the thumbs in the back, and out through the side palms. So taking a nice inhale in through the nose, feel that balloon expand out and away. On the exhale, draw the navel up and in towards the spine and allow the hands to cinch down just a little bit more. And each inhale, see if you can get the balloon to expand out and away a little bit bigger. And with each exhale, see if you can express as much of that air as possible. More and more with each exhale. And we'll take a good 5 to 6 breaths. I want to make sure we avoid getting to a point where we're feeling lightheaded or dizzy, especially since we're on a chair. Each breath out, really press that breath out, squeeze the hands in, and then immediately start to fill that balloon up. See if you can feel that light stretch of that expansion of the balloon. Notice anywhere where it does not expand as well, especially if it's different on the right side compared to the left side. Does one side just not move? And normally this is going to happen in the low back area or out through the side palms. Usually most people breathe fairly well into the belly, but they may not breathe as well either on the right side or the left side. And that's an important thing to kind of take notice of. We want to work on that. Go ahead and relax our arms. We're going to pick up our staff again. I'm going to sit sideways for this one. So we're going to get a nice grip on our staff about shoulder width. This is where I want to imagine we're trying to bend or break the staff in two. And I want that bending to come from spiraling through the wrist, spiraling through the elbows. So the elbow pit should be spiraling up towards the ceiling. And I want to feel it in the shoulder blades, where the shoulder blades feel like they're packing down and back onto the rib cage. Feel the shoulder blades moving towards your hip pockets. We're going to keep the staff kind of resting on our knees for the moment, but I want to keep that active bend in the staff. We're going to start by coming back into our breath, and we're going to work some pelvic tilts first. So we're going to inhale, filling up the belly. And I want that breath to move a little bit more into the belly than into the back, and allow the pelvis to tilt forward, getting a nice sway in the back. And then on the exhale, as we draw our navel in, we're going to scoop our pelvis. See if you feel some light stretch in that low back from that scoop. Notice I'm getting a little bit of rounding in the low back as I scoop. Inhale brings that breath into the belly. Again, staff is active. We're still actively trying to bend the staff. So the shoulders should be nice and actively engaged. We're just breathing and mobilizing the low back at the pelvis. With each one, see if you can get a little bit more scoop to see if it kind of rounds that lower back a little bit more. But again, I want to kind of keep that active upper back, so we're not getting a ton of rounding. I'm not letting my upper back completely round forward. I also want to make sure that we're not leaning back too much. As I scoop, shoulders should remain relatively over the hips. Now on the next inhale, as we exhale, we're going to start to add in our shoulders for shoulder mobility. So get that nice inhale, fill up the belly, big sway in the back, and then on the exhale, as we draw the navel in and scoop, we're also drawing the elbows up towards the ears and squeezing back at the same time. So I want to have this scoop at the same time that I'm drawing my elbows back. And the reason for that is it's going to help keep the core engaged, the ribs down, so our back remains straight and we don't get a big hyperextension in especially at our T12 and L1 junction. What I want to avoid is pelvis goes forward, we get that big sway in the back, and I have a big arch and the rib is sticking out. I have a major extension in my mid-back right here. So I'm trying to avoid that by having this scoop, drawing the rib cage down at the same time we're pulling the elbows up. That can feel really hard to coordinate. So it might take a little bit of time and effort. With each exhale, see if you can draw the elbows back a little bit further, not forcing it, but just squeezing in to that end range. On the next one, as you pull back, I want to maintain light tension. We're not pulling back to our maximum, but from here, I want to now elevate the shoulders, reaching up to the ceiling. Feel the shoulder blades come up to the ears, and then draw the shoulder blades back down towards your hips. Keep the elbows extended, reaching up, and then drawing straight down. We can inhale as we press up. Exhale, draw that navel in as you draw the shoulder blades back down. On the next reach, as you reach up, keep the shoulder blades elevated, and now we're going to come back to seeing if we have a little bit more range to draw the elbows back. Inhale as you let the arms come forward a little bit. Exhale as you pull the elbows back. And again, I want to have that scoop and drawing in of the navel as we exhale. Again, elbow or shoulder blades are elevated up towards the ears. You should get a little bit more range from this position compared to when the shoulder blades are packed. We'll go ahead and let the shoulders down, and we're going to set the staff off to the side. Actually, yeah. We're going to come back to it here in a few minutes. Now we're going to grab the base of the chair and pull so that we're pulling our shoulder blades down. I want to feel the shoulder blades slide down the ribs. We can also lift our sternum. I want to get as tall as we can. So we're pulling our shoulder blades down actively, but at the same time we are trying to lift our spine tall. And if you get a little bit of spiral in the elbow pits, spiraling them forward, you should notice that kind of helps to draw the shoulder blades down even more, and we get a little bit of stretch and opening through the upper chest. So I kind of want to feel that. And now we're going to go through our neck mobility. So I really want to keep those shoulder blades actively pulled down. I don't want to let them get soft to where they get to shrug up while we're doing our neck work. This is going to create a lot more tension in the neck, so I want to go nice and slow. And we're going to start by checking our blind spots. And I want to use our eyes to track. So first thing is let your eyes go into the corners as far as they can before you move your head. Feel a little bit of that eye muscle fatigues, eye strain by really reaching your eye into the corner. And then we're going to track and see how far over your shoulder you can look. Bring it back to center, and then doing the same thing to the other side. Eyes track first, feel a little bit of that muscular strain of looking into the corners as far as you can, and then let that draw you into looking into your blind spot. I want to make sure that we're not twisting at the shoulders. So I don't want my head to turn to rotate my shoulders. I want to stay really well fixed to the chair so that the only thing that is moving is the head in the neck. Inhale as you come into the center. Exhale as you look over your shoulder. And notice, how does this feel looking, over the right shoulder compared to looking over the left shoulder? Are you able to get your eyes, your view as far, or does one side feel tighter and more restricted? My left side is a little bit tighter today. So now we're going to get into our tilt and lift. So again, active shoulders. If you need to relax shoulders, get a little shaking them out and then re-engage, that is fine. But as we get into that movement, I want the shoulders locked down. Allow one ear to drop lightly towards the shoulder. I'm not trying to touch my shoulder. It's just a light drop. And then opposite ear, we're lifting it up like we're trying to touch the ceiling. Inhale as you center out. Exhale as you tilt to the other side and lift. Now I don't want the lift to bring the shoulder with it. So as we lift that ear, have that same side hand have a nice grip, and it can even lightly pull down to create just a little bit more traction. Again, I don't want it to be massive. I don't want it to be forceful. And how does this feel lifting with the left ear compared to the right ear? Does one side feel easier, more mobile? Do you feel more connected on one side and the other side feels a little disconnected? My left side right now is difficult to get into. Feels a little disconnected. Got a good range. I feel connected on the right side. Left side's a little bit difficult to get into. Although it's starting to open up now that I'm going back and forth a few times. We'll come back to center, and now we're going to work on glide. So with glide, I want to make sure the cheekbones stay perfectly level. And again, I don't want shifting in the shoulder. So I don't want to move side to side from the shoulder. So I want the shoulders locked down. And we're going to see how much can we laterally glide to the left and then laterally glide to the right. And I want to try to make this as smooth as possible. What I want to avoid on this is I don't want my head to turn and rotate. I want to keep eyes fixed forward. I don't want my head to tilt. I don't want to reach with my forehead and rotate into it. So I want to keep my cheekbones as perfectly parallel and square to the direction that I'm facing. And then from there, I'm seeing how far can we glide from side to side. Again, notice how difficult this is moving to the right compared to moving to the left. Does one side go further? This is a great one to do in front of a mirror where you can really kind of visually see the quality of the movement to the left compared to the right. And real important that we work on getting them to be equal. If one side doesn't do it as well, then I want to work on that, on developing the neurology to that movement. This is an important movement quality for our neck to be able to do. All right, so now we're going to come to our hips, and we're going to get into some figure four, our figure four position. So bringing an ankle up to the knee. I want to make sure the other foot stays nice and flat. And the first thing is, can we get into this position? If this is painful on the hip or the knee and it gets you into a pain level over a level 3, then I want to avoid this position for now. That's going to be a good reason to schedule a consultation with me. So let's go ahead and before we even get into that, let's check both sides just to make sure. And this is actually a pretty good opportunity to assess the quality of our hip mobility. So notice if one knee sits a little higher and if that hip feels a little stiffer. My right knee sits higher. I've had 5 knee surgeries on my right knee. My right hip is a little less mobile, especially in this particular position. So as a comparison, when I bring my left knee up, my left knee sits a good couple of inches lower. So whichever side feels, we'll start on the stiffer, taller side for right now. I want to make sure that the foot that is on the floor remains solid. So I don't want that foot rolling around. Keep that foot nice and grounded. Spread the toes wide. Feel that nice tripod nature of the foot. And we're going to focus on the knee that is elevated. We're going to start by just simply pulling that knee up to the ceiling and then reaching the knee down towards the floor. This is going to mobilize a little bit more deeply in the hip socket. We can inhale as we lift and exhale as we reach it down. It's a super small, subtle movement. We're not going very far. And again, I want to stay very light with it, and I want to make sure that this is not painful in the knee. After 5 to 10 reps, we'll switch and do the same thing on the other side. Nice inhale as we lift, exhale as we reach it down. And again, notice the quality of the movement. I have a little bit more range of motion on the left side. I can reach higher, but I obviously can also drop lower. And the quality of it feels different. It feels smoother and it's not as tight and restricted compared to my right side. In fact, my right side, I could feel it just a little bit in my knee. I'd say I had probably a level 1 slight discomfort in that right knee, which again is fairly normal for me. We're going to switch back to the other side, still working our figure 4. Now I want to work into our folds. So nice inhale. Exhale, I just want to imagine hands are a waterfall and just lightly letting them drop to the floor. As we exhale, I'm just seeing how low can I drop the chest. Inhale, we're bringing it all the way back up. Hands come back up. Exhale, we let our hands fold and fall again. And with each one, we're seeing if we can softly let those hands fall a little bit further. Can we feel our chest drop a little bit more? But I want to make sure that we're not losing our foot on the floor. So I don't want this foot to start rolling around. I want to stay square in the hips as we're getting into this fold. I don't want to force it. We should hopefully feel this in that hip, maybe more in the back of that hip, getting into the glute. Although if you have significant tightness in that hip, you might feel it more up around the knee area. And then we'll switch and do the same thing on the other side. Again, nice inhale, exhale, fold. Notice the difference on this side compared to the other side. Again, make sure that that foot is nice and spread, grounded to the floor. We're not moving through that knee. Everything through the hips is nice and fixed. Nice inhale, exhale, just a waterfall effect over the shin. And we're going to switch back to the other side. And now we're going to do a little bit of light toe mobility. So I got my right knee, right leg up. So I'm going to use my right hand to grip my foot, wrapping my thumb around the bottom base of the big toe, kind of getting a nice little stirrup grip. And all I'm doing is grabbing and holding. And this I'm kind of securing the foot to make sure to keep the foot from moving a whole lot. And then I'm coming to the big toe. Now I want to be very, very light and gentle with this if it's painful. We're going to explore circles of that big toe. And if you've got any kind of bunion formation as we get to that outside edge of that circle, it might be a little uncomfortable. So I want to go slow. You also might find it's a little gristly and there might be some clunky nature to it. And again, that clunky nature could be a little bit uncomfortable. So start small. We're going to grab the big toe and we're going to decompress. So I want to get a light pull, pulling the big toe away from the foot lightly. And then we're going to make a small circle with that big toe. We're going to do 5 circles in one direction. I want that circle to be as smooth as possible and as pain-free as possible. Once we do 5 in one direction, and with these 5, with each one, we're seeing if we can slowly make the circle a little bit bigger without going into any pain. Once we go 5 in one direction, we're going to reverse directions and we're going to start small again and then work to big. And again, I kind of want to feel into where is the edge of that circle where we can, you might feel that there's a hard edge, but I want to make sure it is a non-painful edge. So after 5 in both directions, now I'm going to compress the big toe. So I'm going to push it in, pushing both of my hands in together. And we're going to do the same thing with the circles. But since we're in a state of compression, I want to be even smaller and lighter and more sensitive to how fast we're going to make sure it's not painful. So nice, small circle, holding into that light compressive state. And then we can slowly make that circle a little bit bigger. And we're going to do the same thing on the second and third toes. Still got this nice stirrup grip. Now we're grabbing that second toe. We can start with decompression, and we're going to make some small circles, going 5 in one direction. With each circle, we can see if we can slowly make it a little bit bigger. And then we're going to reverse directions and do the same thing. If this is sensitive, like if you have metatarsal pain, if you have any kind of joint pain at the ball of the foot, then I want to stay below a level 3 on a scale of 0 to 10. This should feel, hopefully this feels good and actually relieving on the foot and not bad. So once you've done your circles in both directions, we're going to go ahead and go to that third toe and do the same thing. Light decompression, light pull, start with a small circle, work to make the circle a little bit bigger, and then reverse directions. Then one last little thing we can do. We can do the same thing through all 5 toes. I'm focusing just on where that foot pain pattern is, but if you're doing this on your own, you're welcome to do all 5 toes. In fact, I generally do all 5 toes. Last little thing I want to do with the toes is I kind of want to just grab each one and slightly twist it back and forth. Very, very light to start with to make sure that it is not painful. And while we're twisting it, you can slightly decompress. So slight pull and a little bit of twist on each one. You might get a little pop in that toe. That's not what we're going for, but if it happens, it should feel good and it's probably giving a little bit of relief. And then we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other foot. So ankle comes up to knee, wrapping our thumb around the base of the big toe, nice little stirrup grip, grabbing the big toe, starting out with decompression. So pull out, small circles, 5 in one direction, each one getting a little bit bigger, and finding that edge where we're moving right on the edge of discomfort without going into pain. Once we do 5 in one direction, we're making our circle smaller and we're doing 5 in the other direction. After we go through decompression, we're going to go compression. We're going to press the big toe in and do the exact same thing. Again, small circles first. We're in that compressed state, so I don't want to move into pain. Notice if this big toe has less range of motion, especially through the outside edge, moving it out and away. Any kind of bunion formation on the outside of this foot is going to create restriction, a structural restriction that's going to take away range of motion. So I want to move into that space as much as I can without forcing it, because that's going to help to prevent that bunion formation. That's an area that we want to get the ball of the foot or the big toe to start moving into again and not deviating away from. So now we're going to come back to our second toe, doing the same decompression and circles in both directions. So light grip, start small with your circle, work to big, doing 5 in one direction, and then reversing directions. And then same thing with the third toe. And again, if you want to do all 5 toes, I highly recommend it. Only reason I'm not doing all 5 toes is for the purpose of time constraint of the video. And once you've done 5 in each direction, then we can add a little pull and slight twist on each toe. And if you are dealing with kind of metatarsal pain, inflammation pain, this is something I would recommend doing on a fairly regular basis throughout the day. Not just daily, but throughout the day. All right. So now we're going to come back to our chair aspect, and we're going to change our orientation on the chair, getting into a side sit. So basically a lunge stance. If you want to do this on the floor, this is great on the floor. So I want the back knee to be, if you are able to, for it to be slightly off the floor. So hopefully you have a chair that allows you to have a little space. And I want to get that big toe tucked underneath as much as possible without being in an elevated state of pain. Couple of things, if this is that metatarsal pain, you may have to bring that knee a little bit more forward than usual, or you might have to unload the big toe. If that's the case, then that's what we're going to do. Although I want to encourage that we are at least exploring this position, seeing how much can we get a little bit of light load onto that big toe in this position without being in that level 3 or above. So from here, we're coming back into our breath and we're going to work our hip mobility again, but now we're working one hip at a time. So getting a nice breath into the belly, allow that breath to open up the belly forward, exhale, we're drawing our navel into the spine, and I want to get a nice scoop of the pelvis. This is going to be a little harder to get fully into if we don't have that big toe tucked, but it is still possible to find that scoop. You're going to kind of have to feel the pressure of the top of the foot pushing down into the floor in order to feel that light stretch through the front of the hip. You'll also get a little bit more stretch down into the quad. Again, nice inhale, feel that big sway in the back. Exhale, scoop, feel that light stretch through the front of the hip. We're going to do 5 to 10 reps. If you got that big toe tucked, with each exhale, as you scoop, feel that big toe dig. I want to feel that mobility work at the level of the big toe, as well as the stretch in the front of the hip. The big toe and this front of the hip are paired together in our gait mechanics. When we get into our push-off, this is where the extension of our big toe is going to be, and we're going to be we fire this hip flexor at the same time. So I want to see if we can feel that load with this stretch at the same time. And then we'll switch and do the same thing on the other side. Again, see if you can find that big toe load. If it's painful, then we're going to have to make some adjustments. Inhale into the belly, exhale, drawing navel into the spine. As you scoop, feel that loaded stretch through the front of the hip. Feel the loaded stretch on the ball of the big toe. And notice if it's different on this side. Is it a bigger stretch on the ball of the big toe on one side compared to the other? That's going to be important. Do you feel as big of a stretch on the front of the hip? Or does it feel different in both of those places on one side compared to the other? Once you've done 5 to 10 reps, we're going to switch back to the other side. Getting into the same position, we're going to do the same movement. I'm changing my orientation because we're going to add in our arm lift, but everything else is the same. Breathing into the belly, feel the pelvis tilt. Exhale, scoop as we draw our navel in, feel that stretch. And now the same knee that's down, that hand is going to reach up like you're trying to touch the ceiling. Inhale, let the shoulder relax, fill up the belly, big sway in the back. Exhale, draw the navel in. Feel that big toe dig, and then reach. And I want to see how high can we get that shoulder to lift up to the ceiling. But I want to do so without dropping the opposite shoulder. So I don't want my opposite shoulder dropping down towards the back of the chair. I want to lift and get tall without a whole lot of drop through that opposite shoulder. Nice. Inhale, fill up the belly. Exhale, scoop and lift. And then we'll switch and we'll do the same thing on the other side. So again, big toe nice and loaded. Inhale into the belly. Exhale, draw navel in, scoop, and adding in that nice lift and reach. Again, notice how it feels on this side, different from the other side. Do you feel more of a tendency to want to drop that opposite shoulder? Are you able to lift as hard? Do you have a bigger stretch through the front of the hip into that reach? Or maybe it just feels disconnected, like one side belongs to one body and the other side belongs to somebody else's body. That's going to be an important kind of distinction to be able to make as well. All right, we're switching back to the other side and we're going to go ahead and grab our staff again. Still in our split stance. Everything that we're starting with from the foot through the hip with our breath is going to be the same, but now we're going to bring our staff so that it's on touching the top tips of both shoulders, and I'm going to cross hands so the hands are over the top of the staff at the tips of those shoulders, and then elevate the elbows just a little bit so now the staff is kind of resting on the front of the shoulders. I'm doing this in order to keep our shoulders square. I want the shoulders to move as one unit. We're going to inhale, filling up the belly, getting that sway in the back. Exhale, scoop as we draw our navel in. And then we're seeing how far can we rotate, keeping the staff in place. And how far can we turn our chest towards the back of the chair. Inhale, bringing it back forward. Let the belly open up, big sway in the low back. Exhale, scoop, and rotate. Now, if you're finding that balance on the chair is a little bit precarious, having both hands on the staff, it's okay to let the staff drop down and use the hand on the chair to help guide you, but I want to make sure that we're not over pulling. So everything else will be the same. So I'm going to go through this real quick just to give that alternative. Inhale, pelvis tilts forward, feel that belly opening up. Exhale, scoop and draw the navel in, and we're turning towards that back chair. Again, if you got to have a hand on it because you feel like it's really difficult to stay on the chair, it's okay to have a hand on that chair and then lightly assist that pull. I want to make sure our pull is not pulling our legs and rotating our hips. I want to keep the hips active, and I'm just seeing how much can I turn my sternum towards the back of the chair. Inhale, coming all the way back forward. And again, if this is with the staff, I'm seeing how much can I turn and rotate. Again, I don't want the knees going with me. I want those knees staying active and counter to the direction that I'm turning my chest. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Back toes loaded, staffs across the front of the chest. Inhale, fill up the belly. Exhale, scoop and rotate towards the back of the chair. Nice big inhale, fill up the belly. Nice exhale, draw the navel in and rotate. Notice if you're able to go farther in one direction than the other. Does one side feel tighter and more restricted? Good. All right. And last thing I want to work on in the chair is just some simple cat-cows. We're going to come back to what we started with that nice breath in, filling up the belly, letting the pelvis tilt forward. Exhale, drawing navel into spine, getting a little bit of a scoop. Again, I want to see if we can feel some mobilization in that low back. If it's tight, then we're going to feel it as a little bit of a stretch. Inhale, fills it up. Exhale, draws in. Feel that low back mobilize. And now I want to add in our arms. So as we exhale, drawing navel in, I want to reach both arms forward and spiral thumbs down. Allow the shoulder blades to round across upper back, but keep your eyes forward at the wall in front of you. As we inhale, getting tall, allow the arms to drop down to your side. Spiral the palms up towards the ceiling. Feel the shoulder blades pack down and back as your sternum lifts up tall. Exhale, draw the navel in, scoop. Arms reach forward, thumbs turn down. Eyes stay fixed on the wall in front of you, but reach and extend those fingers. I want to keep the shoulders over the hips, so I'm not reaching back. I'm not lunging forward with the shoulders. I'm rounding my back. My shoulders, for the most part, stay over the hips. So all the movement is the scoop and the reach. Inhale, I get nice and tall and open up. Spiral those palms up towards the ceiling. See if you feel that stretch across the upper chest. See on the exhale, can you feel that stretch across the upper back? Nice. All right. At this point, we're going to go ahead and get down on the floor. We're going to get into our shin box position. I'm starting out my left side shin box. Left hand is coming down to the side. We're just going to do 2 movements in shin box. I want to do some light hip mobility and then some folds. So with hip mobility, I want to feel the back hip. So I'm in my left side shin box. I'm looking at my right hip. On the inhale, I want to feel that right hip drop down to the floor. If it touches the floor, great. And if it does not touch the floor, that's not a big deal. On the exhale, though, we're going to lift that hip and scoop and reach it forward. So I want that hip to come as high off the ground, and I want it to move as far forward as it can. And while we're doing this, I want to feel that hip go into extension. We're scooping into it. Can you feel a light stretch through the front of the hip? Inhale, we're coming all the way back down. Exhale, we're scooping into it. And if we're able to get enough hip extension, we'll start to feel our glute activate. And that's what I want. I want to feel that active glute. Inhale to exhale. And if you're able to feel that glute activate, I want you to continue to scoop into it more to see if you can feel the glute activate more. We can use this as a mild glute activation exercise if you're able to get enough extension to feel tension in that glute. And then we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. Again, palms down, nice grounded shoulder, elbows externally spiraled. Inhale, allow that back hip to drop down towards the floor. Again, if it touches the floor, great. If it doesn't touch the floor, not a big deal. Although if it's different on one side compared to the other, that is something that I want to pay attention to. Exhale, we're scooping as we lift, seeing if we can feel that stretch through the front of the hip. And can we start to feel that contraction in the glute, in the back? In each one, we're trying to move more into that extension to get more of that contraction. Notice if one side is different than the other. Do you get more extension? Is there a bigger stretch or less of a stretch? Do you get more contraction or less contraction on this side? And then we're going to switch back to the other side, and now we're going to do some light folds. And I want to go side to side on this. So with our folds, and we're going to do our windshield wipers to transition across. So as I'm in my shin box on one side, we're going to use the shins as the arrow, and we're just lightly reaching both hands through that shin. Inhale, we're coming all the way back up. And then we're going to do a nice slow windshield wiper across to the other side. Get into position, and same thing. Both hands reach evenly through the shin as we exhale. Inhale, nice and slow all the way back. And we're going to go back and forth. Nice exhale, reach. And as we're going back and forth, the first thing I want to do is notice the difference of how this feels on one side compared to the other. I don't want to get focused on how far I'm going. I want to feel the difference first. Does it feel different on the left side compared to the right side? And to do that, I got to go slow, and I cannot reach too far, because the farther I reach, the more feedback I'm going to get from my body, the harder it's going to be to notice the differences in quality. It's just going to be too much noise. So I want to go slow to keep the noise down to a minimum. Once we start to feel the difference between side to side, then we can start to reach a little bit further with each one. But I'm more concerned with balance. So I want to notice, like, how does it feel reaching through the left side compared to reaching through the right side? And I'm seeing how much farther can I reach my fingers. Also, how much lower can I feel my chest drop down comfortably without going into pain. And after we've done about 5 to 10 reps going side to side, I want to come back to our starting position. I'm back in my left side shin box, and I want to do another quick round of our first hip mobility. Inhale, letting the back hip drop. Exhale, scooping it forward, feeling that contraction in the glute. Inhale, all the way back down. Exhale, scoop. And can we get a little bit more contraction in the glute now than we did just a few moments ago? And we'll do 5 on this side. Again, I want to get maximum contraction, especially if we're able to get more. I want to maximize what we're getting. So scooping into it, feel that glute fire up. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So again, grounded palm. Inhale, letting that hip drop back. Exhale, scooping it forward. Can we get more glute contraction? My first time doing this, my left hip was a lot tighter and it was hard to get full extension and get that full contraction. But I got a little bit more mobility after doing the folds. So sometimes we need to go through a few of our hip mobility and then come back to the areas that felt tighter. And going through all of the mobility tends to help open up those tight areas so that we can then work them neurologically. So right now that I got more access, I want to get that full extension and really maximize that contraction, because I want to feed the neurology of hip extension, glute contraction. This is an area in which when we get glute inhibition, it's because we don't have good neurology to that glute, and that's largely because we cannot get into the range of motion in which we can use that neurology, and so we lose that neurology. So I want, anytime we can open up that space, rebuild that neurology, we got to take advantage of it and put in the reps in order to make sure that it's working. All right, last part, we're going to come all the way onto our back. And we're going to do one last simple hip or glute activation. So legs are going straight out. We're going to bring one foot flat to the floor. And then we're going to move that foot out to about 45 degrees from the midline of the body. So if my foot's in line with my body, my foot's going to be straight. As I bring it out to 45 degrees, notice how the angle of my knee and my foot are now 45 degrees from my midline, roughly. I want to have a nice tripod foot, so I want to make sure the foot is spread. I want to feel contact with the foot at the big toe, ball of the pinky toe, and the heel. And I want to make sure that that stays even all the way through. So I don't want to push more into the big toe, which is going to probably draw the knee inward and lift the pinky toe. I don't want to push so much through the pinky toe that my knee goes out and I lift up the ball of the big toe. And I want to make sure that I'm not pushing through just the balls of the feet to where the heel lifts up. I want to make sure all 3 points are evenly in contact with the floor. The opposite leg is completely relaxed. Should have no energy. We're going to keep this hip completely on the ground, and we're going to stomp down through the foot that's flat and scoop that tailbone up towards the ceiling. This is a similar scoop as what we were doing in our shin box move. So as I scoop up, I want to feel this slight stretch through the front of the hip, and I want to feel the glute contract. This is a small movement. It's not a big movement. So sometimes people are trying to move so much that they're lifting both hips off the floor. The opposite leg is like really active. That's too much. This is one leg doing the work. We're scooping into it lightly, and I want to feel that glute lock down. And I want to feel that glute lock down through downward pressure into the foot. Inhale, we're letting the hip bow the way back down. Exhale, we're scooping into it, finding that glute contraction and then maximizing it. I don't want to over push to where I'm lifting my whole body up.
I want to scoop and really maximize the stretch in the front and maximize the contraction in the rear. Again, we're feeding in activation into that glute. So after doing about 10 reps on one side, we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. Foot comes out to about 45 degrees, spread foot, nice tripod. Inhale, exhale, we're scooping into it, feeling into that stretch in the front of the hip, and seeing if we can maximize the glute contraction in the rear, making sure the other leg is not active. If you feel any kind of downward pressure, your heel's pushing hard, your opposite glute is firing up, then that means you are working too hard and you need to shut that side off and only focus on this other side. Again, it is a small range of motion. As I scoop that tailbone into it, I'm locking into the glute. It doesn't need to go far to get there. And once I got it locked in, the more pressure I put into my foot, the more I'm going to feel the contraction in the glute. It's not going to move me more. I'm going to feel more stretch and more contraction, and that's it. Inhale, letting it all back down. Exhale, really maximizing that pressure down through the floor and contraction in the glute. Notice how does it feel on this side compared to the other side. And once we've done 10 on this side, we're going to go ahead and relax our legs. I actually would encourage doing a second round of those movements, especially if there was a big difference in contraction on one side compared to the other. I would do 2 or 3 or more reps or sets of those going back and forth until you feel a little bit more balanced in how it feels on the right side and the left side, because I want balance in neurology. We're going to let both feet go nice and flat, and we're going to come back to our big C shapes with our hands, placing them around the abdominal wall, getting that nice squeeze, and we're going to breathe, come into our crocodile breath. Nice inhale, feel that expansion out and away. Exhale, drawing navel all the way into the spine. Squeeze the hands lightly. And then immediately inhale, filling up and expanding the abdominal wall. We'll get 5 to 6 nice breaths, building that expansion out as much as possible. We can then slowly let our arms drop to the side. Let the shoulders relax. We're going to bring that breath up into the ribs. Same idea. Breathing out, feeling that expansion like a balloon in all directions, not just forward into the chest, but into the upper back, out through the side ribs. On the exhale, start to feel the body relax and melt into the floor. Next inhale can come up into the shoulders and into the neck. And at this point, we can imagine that we're breathing into tension. And then on the exhale, we're letting that tension rinse off onto the floor. Take enough breaths that you feel your body start to soften and relax. And when you're ready, we can very slowly sit back up. I want to make sure that we're not lightheaded or dizzy before getting into a seated or standing position.